Thank you for joining us, Pierre. It's really nice to have you here, and thank you for being on our Biotech Makers series. I've got so much to talk to you about because you have such an impressive resume. I mean, you've got 30 plus years experience in the life sciences industry. You've been CEO of three companies and startups. You're a chairman and a non-executive director of multiple companies. So you're quite an expert in the field. So I'd really like to hand over to you to give a brief introduction of yourself.
Originally, I'm a PharmD by training, and I did a few years of residency in university hospital, doing hospital biology and clinical pharmacology and toxicology. And after 3 years, finally decided I would reorient my career towards the industry. Went into law school where I got a master's in business law and with a major in IP, and then moved on to get an MBA, and then fast forward 35 years into the industry, with quite a long period as an executive in various locations, various companies, various types of products, all the way to being general manager of affiliates and being members of executive committees. I've been 3 times CEO of startup companies, and about 8 years ago, I decided I had enough of executive life, and I would reorient my career to board positions and to some advisory roles, except that I've been betraying the promise I made to myself and converted one of those board roles into an executive position into a Chinese company which is involved into vaccines, especially the coronavirus vaccines.
Wow, I really don't know how you have time to do all of those things. It's very impressive, and I'd really like to kind of wind back a little bit and really start at the beginning of your journey with starting up a business. So I'd really like to know, what was that motivator for you to start a business?
The seed of the pearl was rather identifying a promising technology which would lend itself well to a startup company, and this one is something which, besides all my other activities, which I'm starting right now with 3 other gentlemen, pretty much my age, so we're actually young entrepreneurs but senior gentlemen. All of us with a lot of experience in the industry, some of us as entrepreneurs, others as executives in the life science industry, and we have essentially a product, a concept, an idea, and we are starting a company. So in this second instance, the driver is rather a product which would answer a medical need, therefore, serve an unmet medical need in this respect, serve the patients. In this specific case, it's in oncology. It's not the treatment of cancer itself, it's more the treatment of some of the consequences of the cancer therapy. And that this is the driver behind the creation of that second venture. So as you can see, 2 examples, they're very different, but they're essentially the result of a maturing process. It comes out naturally as the best way to move forward and to create the proper vehicle to get to the next step.
What support did you get with that from the beginning? Like, what was your support network like, and who did that involve?
At first, the support you find in here. I mean, you need to be convinced of your own idea. You need to have the courage, the willingness to venture a little bit in the unknown and to create something which is a bit different. Then the rest of the support materializes along the way. I mean, you need legal support, of course. You need the intervention of lawyers to help you structure the company. Which legal structure? How do you build the capital? The shareholding, the shareholders agreement, and so on and so forth. You need, of course, IP support. So those again are lawyers, but they're specialized in the world of intellectual property in relation with patent on the technology, but also the brand, with the branding both of the company and the product. So we have in this case a group of founders ticking a few boxes, and that helps of course, to get the company off the ground. But it is not addressing all the questions. So it's a matter of being able to outsource, to shop around, and to find the support that you need in a timely manner.
As well as having the support, and that in itself is a challenge, trying to sometimes find that support. I imagine you face a lot of other challenges, and you've probably faced different challenges with these different companies that you've been there from the beginning to set up. So could you talk us through some of the challenges you faced and give advice to others of, how you could maybe overcome some of these challenges?
Young companies have not necessarily simple problems, but they're problems that pertain to the early stage of the company, and as the company matures, as it gets further ahead into the development of the products, as it is getting more structured, you run into different issues. So typically early on, especially in the field of life sciences, the first I would say challenges, hurdles that you're meeting pertain to evidently to financing. It goes without saying. Early stage ventures are perennially short of cash. You have a very difficult equation to balance between the cash you have and the resources you need to invest into, because you need skilled input in terms of preclinical development, in terms of development of your manufacturing process, in terms of shaping your clinical development plan, in terms of interfacing with the patent offices anywhere in the world, and that's the type of problem. As the company grows, you run into, I would say, the juvenile version of the problems or the hurdles that the larger companies are experiencing, meaning the company is growing, you need to structure the company, you need to create processes, you need to work on the information flow internally, you need to work on the decision-making processes, you need to work on the globally on the governance. Of course, if you want to prepare for an IPO, which is not the case for every company, but then you need to structure the company, especially from the finance perspective, internal controls, all this formalism which is required to get the company ready for the IPO. So those are only examples, but I think the point I'm making here is that the nature of the hurdles that you meet are, of course, directly related to the stage of maturity or the stage of development of the company. They typically cut across a number of functions, or if not functions, types of resources that you need to outsource in order to get the support that you need. And in a way, the challenge for the entrepreneur is to know when, or to anticipate when those resources will be required. And this is probably where people who have some previous experience of managing companies from early stage and through the development, or even in structured companies, are probably an edge relative to entrepreneurs who transition from the academic world into the corporate world, because typically the functioning of the academic world is substantially different, and most of the time, I would say, first-time entrepreneurs who move from the academic world into becoming startuppers have a little bit of a hard time anticipating what is needed at the right time, and if they don't get the right advice, at times you can have I would say a little bit of a bumpy progress of the company.
What did success look like? When did you think, right, okay, now this is a successful business?
If you want to stay in your company, and you want to bring your company, say you have a product-based company, and success is defined for you as, I will be commercializing my own products to patients or to hospitals, or then success can be a bit remote, but that's a definition of success. Success can also be defined as, I just want to make a successful exit, and then someone else will take care of my baby, and then I'll sort of create a new baby, or maybe I'll go fishing. And so the notion of success is more, I would say, defined by what type of exit would you as an entrepreneur like to make? If you want to stay on board, if you want to essentially transfer your company to someone in your family, or if you want to sell your company to a large one. So there's no, I would say, standard definition of success. I think it's important to keep this in mind, because then I can move on to my definition of success. It's still very early stage. So how do we, the four partners, how do we define success? We define success as the ability to bring the product to market after registration, commercialize in Switzerland, and find partners in other countries outside of Switzerland. And those partners will be, in turn, taking care of the marketing and selling of the product in the respective countries. So this is how we define success, and that's part of our business plan.
I want to ask you, with your journey, what advice would you give to others who are on that journey? Because I guess people who are starting up businesses are often going to spend a lot of time evaluating their decisions, questioning themselves, perhaps having doubt. So what advice can you give to other people to kind of walk them through them stages, and what's normal in that situation?
If there's only one sentence, one piece of advice, is don't underestimate inertia. Things are always happening more slowly than anticipated. Why? Because, take an example in the field of life science. You want to develop a product. Let's assume you have the cash, okay? So you've been successful in raising the money. And now you're going around and you're identifying CMOs to develop the process of your product, and CROs to do your preclinical work. And let's say for some reason you need a specific type of animal, or you need specific containment conditions. And what you get, the response you get from the market is, sure, we'll do your research, except we have a slot in 6 months. And this was not planned. That 6 months becomes a part of your planning, and it was not anticipated. And it creates a 6-month slippage in your overall timeline. And that happens all the time. If it takes you 8 weeks to negotiate an agreement instead of 4 weeks, the extra 4 weeks result in a commensurate slippage. So, and every single item which you need to contract out will be subject to an agreement, which has to be negotiated. You may, if you know already the providers, that could be faster, but if you don't know the providers, you have to go shop around, have a beauty contest, compare offers, etc. Now, all this takes time. The one thing that you should never underestimate is the fact that time is elapsing faster than you think. And this has a huge bearing on the way you conceive financing. Okay, it's building some buffer in the way you fund your company, because you don't want to find yourself dry in terms of cash before you reach your inflection points. If you don't manage to deliver results that is your currency to negotiate with investors, that you've been delivering value, and therefore you deserve to get more money, there's nothing worse than actually going back to them before you get the results and say, look, I promise the results will come, but you don't know what the results will be. So the advice is, don't underestimate the fact that time is elapsing faster than you think, and always plan for more in terms of cash. Keep some buffer.
From an investor's perspective, what is it you do? What are you looking for?
Typically, from an investor perspective, we look at three things. Okay. People would think that the most obvious is to look at the venture itself, look at the product, look at its intellectual property, look at the technology. Is it really suited for the purpose? Is there a good understanding of the competitive landscape, both direct and indirect? Is the technology agile enough to fit in different contexts of usage? So that's, I would say, classical due diligence. The second piece is about the market. Of course, you look at the context. How is the product going to be used? Is there any foreseeable change of the competitive landscape or of the regulation that could potentially change the operating conditions? and is the company able to anticipate those changes? Is the company capable of detecting those maybe weak signals that would actually give you I would say, a way to maybe reorient your development plan or your business plan? And arguably, to me, the most important piece is the third one. It's the people. You're actually not only investing in a company, in an asset, you're also investing in brains, in people who have been inventing the technology in the first place. And you want these people to remain committed, to be there, to be committed to success, to take it to the finish line, or at least to some degree of finish line. Could be halfway through the development, depending on their know-how and on their forte. And you want also to have someone who's willing to work with the investor. An investor is typically someone who's been an entrepreneur himself. It's a person who has done this before, and when they want to put their money to work, they want to have a say. Okay, it's not, here's the money, we'll see you 5 times a year at the board meeting with a discussion around a PowerPoint deck. It's not the way it works. The investors are willing to support, but in a very benevolent and positive manner, meaning it's my money. I invest in you because I had the choice of tens or hundreds of other ventures. I decide to put my money in your company, and I want you to succeed. So in a way, investors are looking for people who are willing to be good mentees. Okay, they want to mentor them, and they want to have a fluid working relationship.
Is there anything that kind of stands out to you that is of particular importance in terms of big mistakes that people make when they come to you looking for investment?
Well, the first mistake that people make is it's like when you sell a house. Okay, you always have an asymmetry between the perceived value in the minds of the seller and in the mind of the buyer. So the valuation is typically a difficult question, and you often have a discrepancy between the perceived value in the mind of the entrepreneur and in the mind of the investor. At times it is a bit difficult to reconcile. The second common mistake I'm seeing is this, I would call it marketing myopia or business intelligence myopia, where investors tend to look at competition as in a very narrow definition, meaning, people working on my same metabolic pathway or the same receptor. And then you have to essentially open their eyes and tell them, look, when you are going to talk to the regulators, and then in the end we're going to talk to physicians who will prescribe the product, they are not interested in the receptor. They're not interested in that agonist or that antagonist. They're interested into the clinical benefit. So anybody who works towards generating the same clinical benefit on the same condition, even though that other team may be working on a completely different approach, different technology, different metabolic pathway, is a competitor. And the third mistake that they make in the financing is that any company at the same stage is a competitor. You could be in oncology or into central nervous system or cardiovascular. Any company which is early stage and that is more convincing than you could actually be getting the money from investors who invest in early stage companies. And considering the imbalance between the number of investment cases that we look at when you invest and the number of tickets that you actually sign on, you're looking at 1 to 2% maximum, maybe a bit more in some instances, but not a lot more. So the point is, it's a game of attrition. So competition for cash is anybody around. So you need to be really good at understanding your technology, understanding your market, and selling your value proposition in a convincing manner.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Pierre, and I just want to take the time to thank you for taking your time to share your insights and expertise with the rest of the biotech makers.